Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 28 of my 2022 reads. This week I read a romance novel, a poetry collection, and I DNF'd one of my anticipated new releases. Timestamps and content warnings are in the description box below. First, I finished Her Favorite Rebound by Jackie Lau, which is number 4 in the Cider Bar Sisters series. This is a contemporary romance, and we follow Sierra, who used to be an engineer but now runs a very cute little stationery shop, and she's much happier. She's also dating a guy, Colton, and Colton is a very rich, very powerful businessman, but she's finding herself a little unsatisfied with that relationship. He is very much constantly busy with other things, jet setting around the world. They don't have a very close relationship, and he doesn't seem to really get her. One day into the picture steps Jake. Jake used to be a lawyer, used to actually work for Colton, but had such a bad experience with that, with how unethical everything was, that he left the lawyering business entirely and now does woodworking and is kind of trying to reform himself. And he warns Sierra that Colton is really not a great guy, and actually that he has a little bit of interest in her himself. He sort of finds her instantly just so attractive and interesting and wants better for her experience in life, and also kind of wants to be in it himself. This book is really interesting because over half of the book, Sierra is still in a relationship with Colton because it takes her a while to kind of come to terms with what she wants out of life and that relationship, until she ends up breaking up with him, and her rebound is Jake. So that's just like very interesting for a romance novel to have over half of the book with the characters not together. But as soon as they are together, it is very, very high heat, lots of steamy scenes, and they're very much, into each other. This is also interesting because there is a lot of toxic relationships in this book, just in terms of especially family members. Both Jake and Sierra have some family members who constantly are judging them and making them feel inferior or just like not good people. And so there's a lot of drama in that, which isn't so much my thing. But I did really like the interactions between Jake and Sierra. Lots of banter, lots of steamy scenes, that sort of stuff. So like the attraction between them was really solid, but just not maybe my favorite tropes in this book. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I finished All the Flowers Kneeling by Tran. This is a new 2022 release poetry collection that I thought was really wonderful. I really love the way that Tran plays with language in this collection. The rhythm of the poems is fantastic, the structure of them, and especially the wordplay is just so creative and so well done. It's incredibly evocative, and it just uses the form of language, words that seem similar, but also kind of highlights the dissimilarities in juxtaposition. It's so well done. Really, really strong in terms of the format of the poetry. And in terms of the themes, I thought it was also really well done. A lot of this is covering kind of heavy stuff. So Tran was raped, and a lot of these poems deal with kind of that experience and that trauma and the recovery from that. So if that's a trigger for you, definitely don't pick this up. It is very, very heavy at times, but I thought that it was really well done. There was a poem, for example, talking about filling out the form when reporting that rape, and it's just, it just reaches out to you. There's also a lot in here that is just talking about identity. Tran is a non-binary queer Vietnamese American poet, and there's a lot in this talking about identity, talking also about colonialism and the way that people and bodies are colonized. It's just fantastic theming, really beautiful language. It is a little heavy, and it is a bit visceral and graphic at times, which was a little hard for me because I struggle with that sort of thing. But other than that, I thought this was absolutely fantastic, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I did DNF a book, which I was so sad about because it was one of my anticipated new releases, and that is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. So this was one that I was so excited about. I love the premise of this story. This is basically a retelling of a character, Kaikeyi, who is from one of the Indian epics, the Ramayana, and she is a warrior queen who is sort of a bad person in the Ramayana. And so this is supposed to be this retelling of her story from her perspective, and I was so interested in that because one, I mean, retelling of Indian epics, very interested, but two, just getting the perspective of a character who's done some bad stuff. I thought this would be like a really nuanced look at a person who's not a good person. But it didn't end up being quite that story. So I think my expectations were just a little off. A lot of what this story was doing was retelling things from Kaikeyi's perspective, but in this version, she's actually a much better person, and it's more that because of she was fighting against the patriarchy, she has been vilified in the story. And that just wasn't quite what I think I was looking into. I also think that the writing style in this just wasn't clicking for me. Even from the beginning, I just wasn't that drawn into it. Maybe it just wasn't as atmospheric as I like, or maybe I just wasn't as kind of engrossed in the world as I wanted. I think that Kaikeyi as a character actually was quite strong. Like, you felt a good connection to her. It's first person, but I just wasn't that drawn into the writing itself and the world. I did get pretty far in this book. I actually got to 81% before I DNF'd, but at that point I was kind of struggling to get through. Every time I picked up the book, I would just get a little frustrated and a little bored and just want to put it down. And at 81%, it was like, oh, I still have another 100 pages to go. I don't know that I can do this. Especially because at that point I had understood that, you know, there wasn't going to be that kind of more nuanced discussion of a character who is kind of a bad person, but we're getting their perspective. Instead, you know, Kaikeyi kind of goes a little bit towards the Mary Sue type of character, where she's actually very, very good at a lot of stuff. A lot of people around her are incompetent, and that was just a little frustrating for me. Although I will say that I think the magic system in this is very interesting and very unique. It's not part of the original Ramayana. There's this ability that Kaikeyi has to manipulate the bonds that connect people, and that is a super interesting power, and also something that kind of fits in with the characterization of her in the original Ramayana as being kind of a manipulator, because she here has like that magical ability to manipulate relationships. So there's a lot of cool stuff about this book. It didn't end up working for me, but I think that actually this could work for so many different people. I know that Angela at Literature Science Alliance has a very, very glowing positive review of this, so I'm going to link that down below. If you're interested in this book, definitely check out her opinion, because she had a great time with it. So just because it didn't work out for me doesn't mean that it's not going to work out for you. Okay, so that is everything that I read and DNF'd this week. If you guys have read any of these, if you're interested in them, if you have any thoughts, or if you want to tell me what you've been reading this week, I'd love to hear from you. Just leave me a comment down below.